Stillwater's Morning Scramble. Glad to have you here, and proud to have Kyle Wray, Vice President of Oklahoma State, on.
Good morning.
Haven't seen you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while.
We were off for Good Friday, and so it has been at least 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the world had changed by that time. It seems to have changed even more now, right?
It has. It seems like almost every day, we have something, and the status, the update in the afternoons we get, and so it's been interesting television and radio, hasn't it?
Well, it's everybody uses the word unprecedented, uncharted waters, but and you and I both love history, when you hear people that you've watched for decades and covered the 60s and the 70s and all this, and they said, we've never seen anything like this, just like this, you realize this is historical.
It is, and you try to match it up with something that we've experienced, and there's really nothing like it. I mean, there've been tragedies, and we could start listing, from our age group, from assassination of John F. Kennedy to the Challenger explosion to 9/11 and those were events that happened, and it was stunning, and then you recouped from that and moved on. Well, this continues to occur. I mean, it's like every single day something is happening, deaths, etc., how the country, the state, our community is reacting to
and
it.
how we
it's
behave
different.
Today affects tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And obviously this weekend, the anniversary of the Murrah building.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which is, it's 25 years, and that's kind of been lost. I know a lot of the networks are doing specials on it and stuff, but that's been 25 years ago. College students don't even remember that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
I mean,
good point.
They weren't alive at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, how we behave today does affect our tomorrow, and whether we all want the economy up and going, everybody agrees with that. But how we handle this could deter it rather than propel it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I'm gonna give you an interesting statistic here. This Saturday is Junior Day, and we've been talking about that for months, right? And so it's all virtual, it's all online. On this date last year, for Junior Day, a face-to-face program that was in Gallagher-Iba Arena, we had 1,300 juniors register for that program. Okay, remember that number, 1,300. That was this time last year, 2019. Right now, registered for an online program in excess of 2,000 juniors. 700 more juniors, a total of about 3,300 when you add in the parents, are registered for that event virtually tomorrow.
Wow.
And so, and people have asked me, why is that? And here's what I think. When I say the word Zoom, a lot of the people that are listening to your program right now are going to roll their eyes because they're tired of Zoom. They've zoomed out. But we've been using technology for professional purposes, meeting, whether WebEx or Zoom or FaceTime or whatever it is. And it's all been for professional usage. And the 16, 17-year-olds have sort of been left out of that. This is designed specifically for them. And people haven't been able to come visit campus. And so we've sort of drew back the curtain on an event that's virtual, and I think because of that, a lot of people have registered.
It's almost like Easter Sunday. Some of these pastors were talking to the largest congregation they ever had, because they're seeing numbers now, and it's amazing because people all over their former people who have moved to other areas, or the people that we had Reverend Tim Walker on earlier. He had people from his former church that were watching him this week.
Yeah, and
so it opens up maybe a different door a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's not the way we wanted to do that, but we are learning as we go along with everything. Some of this is going to stick.
You bet. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have another virtual Junior Day, I see, next year, right?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. It's going to make us appreciate face-to-face even more, right?
Absolutely. And I know we've got a big announcement coming up here, but and I had a friend that asked me this, and I think a lot of people are concerned about this. If you're in business, if you're a landlord, if you're any of these things, we're realizing how much we count on what's coming up in August, or could be coming up in August. And we're hearing people talk about, well, will it be online? And we realize that a community this size, we depend so much on those students coming. Mm-hmm. What are the talks about that? And enrollment is one of your big things. You are enrollment.
Right.
Where are we with that?
Well, it's interesting, and I'll take that in two parts. And I'll take the last half first, and then we'll talk about what the potential is for enrollment in the fall. Number one, all the numbers that we have right now are still high. So applications for admission, how many students we have admitted, students that have submitted their enrollment deposit for the fall of 2020. In the past week, we've had 50 students submit their $300 check for their enrollment deposit for 2020. All of those numbers are still high. We made the announcement this week that new student orientation will be online only. So we will not, for the first time in history, we will not be having new student orientation in the summer face-to-face. It will be all online. We've been preparing for that for 3 weeks. So each college, financial aid, admissions, all of enrollment management have shifted to online. And those numbers for new student orientation in terms of sign-ups are about 40 to 50 ahead of where we were this time last year. When you're talking about a class of over 4,000 being 40 or 50 ahead, that's just a very small margin.
Yeah.
Colleges and universities across the country are bracing for between a 10 and 30% decrease in enrollment. Okay, we don't know if that's what's going to happen at Oklahoma State. We don't have the impact that the coronavirus has had in New York or Chicago or any of those places. And so what will happen here? So it's a big question mark. But the numbers as of right now are good. Now, they could fall off. We've extended the date for accepting your financial aid and all those things and being able to get your deposit back. It's usually May 1st. We've shifted that to June 1st. And that's not the big announcement that we have to make. But so that's the first half. Numbers right now look good. If we were to have face-to-face education in the fall, it looks like we're sitting pretty good. But again, nationally, people are bracing for a 10 to 30% decrease in enrollment. Why? Because they've been impacted negatively from an economic perspective. There's this feeling of, Johnny, we'd really rather you stay closer to home to go to college as opposed to going off 600 miles, 800 miles, whatever it is. So now to the first half of your question. It all depends on the timeline, what the scientists say, what our governor says in terms of whether or not we will be open. If you look at the guidelines set forth nationally yesterday in those three sort of phases, you would hope that we would maybe come in at, you could even see us quickly moving from phase 1 to phase 2. And if that happens, then I would feel good about us being able to open up. Right now we're looking at three possibilities. Number one is you open face-to-face, everything's good, press on the gas, we're ready to go. Number two would be potential for online in the fall. You have to think about that. And then face-to-face in the spring. And then we've had other universities across the state talk about online only. We hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see. I mean, it all goes back to the timeline.
Look at how the world has changed in a month here, and we're talking several months down the road. Mm-hmm. So it's going to change.
Sure.
One way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And the three phases that came out, the first one was kind of where we are right now, and then really focusing on making sure that the most vulnerable were still locked down pretty much, and then it just gradually went in. So what did you think of that?
I thought it was good, actually. Yeah. I thought you're right. I mean, shelter in place for people most at risk, schools closed, which we are, right. And then the limited use access to restaurants and that kind of thing. I felt like that's kind of where we are in phase 1. If we could move to phase 2, right. And we've talked about the apex in the state of Oklahoma being next week. And so if we don't see a spike, and there's nothing that shows us that we would be expecting or forecast a spike other than that self-imposed date, and if that doesn't happen, it would be logical to me that we would move into, but the governor has all kinds of folks that are advising him on what the next move should be, and we'll see what happens.
There you go. Okay, we did have a big announcement.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
So here's the big announcement. So this is the first time we're making this public, and that is the Cowboy Cares Emergency Grant. Cowboy Cares Emergency Grant. This is a federal program And so Oklahoma State University has received CARES Act money from the feds that we are going to use to help those students who have been affected by COVID-19. So there's a lot to say about this, and as I say these things, you're going to have questions, and we'll talk about those questions. This is not financial aid money. Okay, it's being distributed by the Office of Financial Aid on our campus, and the reason I make that point is it doesn't negatively impact your financial aid program.
Okay.
So we are giving priority to people who have filled out the FAFSA, because this is all about need first, right? And the way we process need is for students who have filled out the FAFSA. We're not excluding people who have not filled out the FAFSA, but priority will go to students who have filled out the FAFSA and students who have filled out the FAFSA and are Pell eligible, right? Those are the neediest of students that we have out there. Now, it doesn't mean that if you are not a Pell qualifier that you won't be able to get some of that money.
Pell qualifier prior to this.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it won't negatively impact your Pell. So let's say you're a Pell qualifier and you get some of this additional money through the Cowboy Cares emergency grant. It doesn't mean that your Pell will be lessened.
Right.
Okay. And so it has no effect on whatever financial aid that you may be getting. No effect on a university scholarship. No effect if you are an Oklahoma Promise student, for instance. No effect on your loans. No effect on Pell. All right? It is being distributed through financial aid, and it will go as you're interested in getting access to that. You can get on, and as I was driving in this morning, I Googled Cowboy Cares emergency grant, and it came right up.
Okay.
All of our students will be getting an email, and some of them got it overnight, that gives them instructions on how to access an application. It's a very concise application. Ask them their name, some general information relative to OSU, and then how they've been affected by COVID-19. And it could be that a parent lost a job. It could mean that someone in your family got COVID-19 and caused your family some economic stress as a result of hospital stay, let's say, or additional medical bills. And so there's a drop-down box that allows you to say, here's how it's affected me. And there's even an amount that you could say it's affected our family by $8,000, $5,000, whatever it is. We're going to process these, Steve, on a case-by-case basis. There is no everybody that applies gets $3,000. That's not going to happen. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
So do you have a board set up for this?
We have a group in financial aid that will be processing that. And so as we put that information out, and then it was received back by our people that are at OSU or about to attend OSU for the first time. And so if you're a faculty member, a staff member out there, and you know students who have been affected negatively by COVID-19, and let me pause here for just a second. This is money from the feds that's only to go to COVID-19. I'm going to make this story up. Let's say that you had someone who filed for bankruptcy back in December that had nothing to do with COVID-19. This money is not for that. Okay.
When you say it only goes to that, define that a little bit. But you mean it's not meant to pay your rent, or is it?
It could potentially be for that if you've been negatively impacted by COVID-19, and so it could mean to pay your housing on campus at Oklahoma State. Okay. It could mean so. Let's say
these are liabilities that came from COVID-19.
That's right.
Gotcha.
Let's say that. Again, I'm making this story up, but it would be an example that at the time of when we said we're no longer going to have face-to-face classes on campus, you had a bursar bill of $1,600. You went home only to find out that your mother lost her job, and you can't pay the $1,600 bursar bill that you need to clear to get back and enrolled for the next year. You would put that on this short application, and you could potentially get $1,600 that would clear your bursar bill, and then you would get enrolled, and then maybe you need some additional money
right.
to help pay for the next semester.
There you go.
That's exactly what it's for.
Is there a ceiling for this? Per
There is a finite amount of money that the feds have given Oklahoma State University to use for that purpose. That's why we're using it on a case by case basis. If I'm making these numbers up. If we handed out $7,000 to every student, that money would run out very quickly, and we'd be giving $7,000 to some students that don't need it.
Right.
Okay, and so it's got to be need first. FAFSA filers, Pell qualifiers, but that doesn't mean, for instance, if a family, again, I hate to throw out numbers, but I'm making all this up. If your family makes $120,000 a year adjusted gross income, and you didn't fill out the FAFSA, but dad lost his job as a result of COVID-19, you would potentially qualify for some of that money. Just because you didn't fill out the FAFSA, and just because you're not a Pell qualifier, doesn't mean we would exclude you from the Cowboy Cares emergency grant.
Right.
That make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah.
It does. And the reason I asked that was because when you said it goes to COVID-19, I wasn't sure what really that defined that. Mm-hmm. But any liabilities that you've suffered because of that, and obviously this has affected everybody. I mean, most people and a great deal of families. We're deemed essential here, I guess. So I always try not to be hypocritical because it hasn't hit my pocketbook. Mm-hmm. Not at this time, anyway, right? Mm-hmm. But so many people it has.
Right. And it could, as we hope that we move back into that phase 2, if we're in if it's fair for us to say in Oklahoma or in Stillwater, we're in phase 1 now, when we could move into phase 2, when we could move into phase 3, my fear is that we haven't seen all of the economic impact yet, that there could be additional layoffs, because they're just like the COVID-19 situation where the deaths lagged behind the people that had gone to the hospital. I think we're going to see some economic impact lag behind the phases that we're in.
Yeah, and every industry is affected. In fact, I was probably a little misspoken there because we're in the media business. Well, we count on our businesses. So when the businesses struggle, that is passed on.
Sure.
So when you hear people talking about the media is doing this for ratings, that couldn't be further from the truth, because ratings don't matter. They depend on clients and sponsors, and sponsors are being hit hard right now. So you can bet that their pocketbooks are being affected right now in a negative way. Yeah. And with the university, with enrollment, with sports, where you may not have fans and you may have to refund tickets and everything, it's an ongoing thing that you're just trying to absorb, I would imagine.
It is, and you can see that we can turn this a little bit into what we talk about a lot, and that's advertising, because that affects your station, right? And advertising has changed.
Absolutely. And
so you look at television now, and you don't have a guy with a high-pitched voice up in your face telling you that it's 2.5% financing. Come on down right now and buy your car. You don't have that. Right. It is we care about our customers. It's possible for you to buy a car online, and we'll drive it right to your house and drop it off. Yeah. The people talking about their appliances on TV, and it's all, again, up in your face, the high-pitched voice. That's not it. It's our doors are closed, but you can pick something, and we'll deliver it and drop it off at your door. We're not going to come inside and install your new refrigerator, but advertising has changed, and so it's turned more towards the emotions and the caring and the feeling of the American public, maybe now more than it ever has before.
Certainly in our lifetime. Huh?
Yeah.
So I'll take a break, and then we'll dive into some other stuff here. So
you bet.
I hope I guided you in the right direction, or you guided me in the right direction.
Yeah,
because that's a big announcement.
Well, it is. And again, we can talk some more about it when we come back from the break on how if you know a student that has been affected, how they can get access to that application.
Sounds good. There's Kyle Wray, Vice President of Oklahoma State University.